The mechanic dismissed the customer without knowing it was the shop owner in disguise. Michael Anderson watched the scene unfolding before him with a mix of disbelief and anger. Robert Wilson, the head mechanic at the shop, had just pushed an elderly customer out of the establishment, yelling that he didn't have time for people who couldn't even change a light bulb. "Come back when you have real money, old man," Robert shouted, wiping his grease-stained hands on his navy blue overalls. "This isn't a place for handouts." The white-haired man walked away with his head down, clutching the torn-up estimate Robert had thrown in his face. Michael felt his blood boil, but kept his composure. He had arrived at Guardian Auto that Tuesday morning, dressed deliberately in a simple suit and glasses, wanting to see firsthand how the business he'd inherited from his father 6 months ago was running. Now he understood why profits had been plummeting month after month. "Excuse me," Michael said, approaching the counter where Robert was slamming papers down unnecessarily. "I'd like an estimate for my car." Robert looked up, sizing Michael up from head to toe. The neatly trimmed mustache, the light grey suit, the black hat and the thick-framed glasses gave the 28-year-old the appearance of a low-level clerk or salesman. "What kind of problem?" Robert asked, not hiding the disdain in his voice. "It's a 2018 Camry. There's a strange noise coming from the engine." Robert let out a harsh laugh. "A Camry? Buddy, you look like you can't even afford a bicycle payment. Stop lying and tell me which junker you want me to look at for free." Michael took a deep breath. He'd known this man since childhood. Robert had worked for his father, Edward Anderson, for 15 years. He'd always been dedicated, honest, and respectful. What had happened? "I'm not lying. My car is parked right outside." "Then go get it," Robert said, turning his attention back to a part he was disassembling. "But I'll warn you, I won't waste time with people who come here just to haggle." Michael walked to the shop entrance and observed the scene. 3 mechanics worked in the bays, all seeming tense. In the corner, a middle-aged secretary typed something on the computer with a sour expression. The environment he remembered as cheerful and welcoming had become heavy and hostile. When he returned with the silver Camry, Robert made a point of inspecting every detail of the car with suspicion. "This car isn't yours," he declared, crossing his arms. "Either you stole it or borrowed it to play rich here." "Why are you so sure?" "Because I've known this area a long time, kid. People like you don't own cars like this. Now stop wasting my time and leave before I call the cops." Michael felt his hands shake with anger, but he controlled himself. He needed to understand the full extent of the problem before revealing his identity. "Mr. Wilson," he said, remembering the name stitched on the uniform. "I just want an honest estimate. I'll pay in cash." "Cash?" Robert laughed loudly, drawing the attention of the other mechanics. "Hey guys, the playboy here. Says he'll pay in cash." The others laughed too, but Michael noticed they did so reluctantly, as if they were used to following Robert in his humiliations. "Listen here, kid." Robert stepped closer, pointing a grease-stained finger right in Michael's face. "I've worked at this shop longer than you've been alive. I know a real customer when I see one, and you're not. How can you be so sure? First, your hands don't have a single callus. Second, your suit is cheap but brand new, like someone trying to impress. Third, you talk too softly, like someone who's always afraid. People with real money aren't afraid of anything." Michael had to admit that Robert was observant, but his conclusions were completely wrong. "What if I prove to you I can?" "Pay? Go ahead." Michael pulled out a stack of $50 bills from his pocket. It wasn't an absurd amount, but enough to cover any basic service. Robert looked at the money, and his expression shifted slightly. "Where'd you get this?" "From my job." "What job?" "I'm an accountant." Robert studied Michael again, this time more carefully. The suit did look like something an office worker would wear, and the glasses gave him an intellectual air. "Accountant for which company?" Michael had to think fast. He couldn't reveal he was the owner, but he didn't want to lie outright either. "I work with several small businesses. I handle the books for a few shops in the area." "Oh, so you know about car mechanics?" "A little. My father was a mechanic, that much was true." Edward Anderson had started as a mechanic before opening his own shop. Robert seemed to relax a bit. "All right, I'll take a look at your car. But fair warning, I don't give discounts to anyone." I'm not asking for one. Robert popped the hood of the Camry and began inspecting the engine. Michael took the chance to observe the shop more closely. He noticed tools scattered on the floor, parts haphazardly organized, and a strong smell of burnt oil that hadn't been there in his father's day. "When was the last time you changed the oil?" Robert asked. 3 months ago. "What brand did you use?" Michael knew Robert was testing his knowledge. "Valvoline SynPower. Filter. Fram." Robert nodded, seemingly satisfied with the answers. "The noise is coming from the alternator belt," he diagnosed after a few minutes. "Needs replacing. That'll be $150. Michael knew the price was inflated. That part cost $80 at most, but he decided not to argue for now. "How long will it take?" "If you leave it now, it'll be ready tomorrow morning." "I can't leave it today. I need the car for work." Robert slammed the hood shut. "Then there's nothing I can do. This isn't a drive-through, kid. If you want the service, you leave the car. But I can't be without it today. Then go somewhere else." Michael realized Robert was being deliberately difficult. It was like he wanted to discourage customers. "Can't you do it now? It only takes an hour. I've got other cars ahead of you. If you don't want to wait, that's your problem." Michael glanced around. Only 2 cars were being worked on, and the mechanics didn't seem overwhelmed. "Which cars are ahead?" "None of your business," Robert snapped. "You want the service or not?" "I do, but I need to understand why it can't be today. Because I'm in charge here, got it?" The words hit Michael like a slap. Robert really thought he ran the shop. "You're the manager." "I'm the head mechanic. I've worked here 15 years. When old Edward was alive, he gave me free rein to decide everything." Michael's chest tightened at the mention of his father. "Did you know Mr. Edward well?" "Knew him very well. He was a good, hard-working man. Too bad his son didn't want to keep the business going." "What do you mean?" "The kid vanished after the funeral, left the shop in the hands of some lawyers who don't know the first thing about the trade. Now I'm the one running things here." Michael swallowed hard. The lawyers were from the firm handling the legal aspects of the inheritance. He'd asked them to keep the shop running while he decided what to do with it. "And you think that's right?" "Righter than letting it all sit idle. At least this way the employees keep their jobs." Michael wasn't sure whether to feel anger or pity for Robert. The man really seemed to believe he was doing the right thing. "But don't you think you should consult the real owner before making decisions?" Robert laughed scornfully. "The real owner? That spoiled brat has never set foot in this shop. He doesn't even know how to change a light bulb. If it were up to him, this place would have been shut down already." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out since we're just starting. Now back to it. "You're so sure about that?" "Absolutely certain. I've known that kid since he was little. Always been a weakling, scared of his own shadow. His father tried to teach him mechanics over and over, but he never wanted to learn. Preferred burying his nose in books." Michael remembered the afternoons he spent in the shop as a child. He really did prefer books to manual labor, but that didn't mean he didn't care about the family business. Maybe he just had other interests. "Other interests?" Robert scoffed. "His father built all this with his bare hands, and the kid couldn't even show up properly for the funeral. Stayed 5 minutes and bolted." Michael clenched his fists. He had left the wake quickly because he couldn't stand all the empty condolences. He needed to grieve in private. Sometimes people grieve in different ways. "Grieve?" Robert let out a bitter laugh. He was happy to finally have his father off his back. Now he can sell everything and live off the money without lifting a finger. "How do you know he plans to sell?" "Because it's obvious. A spoiled brat like that would never want to get his hands dirty with real work." Michael took a deep breath, fighting the urge to reveal himself right then. But he knew he needed to understand the situation better before acting. What if he doesn't sell? What if he wants to keep the shop running? Impossible. He doesn't even know this place exists. To him, it's just paperwork, an investment. "You're being awfully harsh on someone you don't even know well." Robert stepped closer, his expression turning aggressive. "Listen here, accountant. I don't know why you're defending that. Deadbeat, but I don't need moral lessons from anyone. I'm the one keeping this shop running every day. I solve the problems, I deal with the difficult customers." "And you're doing such a great job," Michael said sarcastically, remembering. The scene with the elderly customer. Robert missed the irony. Damn right I am, this shop's never run better than it does now. Michael looked around again. The walls were grimy, broken tools lay scattered in corners, and the few customers present seemed unhappy. Business slow. Today? Slow, we're booming, can't you see? Michael counted silently. Only 3 cars were being serviced in a shop that could handle 8 at once. Seems a little empty. That's because you came at the wrong time. It'll be packed soon. Michael decided to test that claim. Mind if I wait? I'd like to see how you handle things when it's busy. Robert hesitated. Don't you have work to do? I've got time today. And honestly, I'm curious to see more of the shop. You've talked it up so much. Fine, stay, but don't get in the way. Michael settled into a plastic chair near the counter and watched. In the first hour, only 1 customer came in, and Robert treated him just as rudely as he had the elderly man. The customer wanted a quote for brake pads on a Focus. Robert barely glanced at the car before quoting an outrageous price, insisting the discs probably needed replacing too. But the car's only 2 years old, the customer protested. So what? Depends how you drive. If you brake too hard, you'll wreck everything faster. I don't brake hard. All customers say that, but the reality is different. The customer got upset and left without closing the deal. Robert turned to Michael with an air of superiority. See? Another one who wanted cheap service. Nowadays, no one wants to pay a fair price. Michael began to see the pattern. Robert was driving customers away with high prices and poor service, then blaming the customers themselves for the lack of business. For the rest of the morning, the same scene repeated itself several times. Customers would come in, get poor service from Robert, and leave unhappy. The other mechanics seemed embarrassed but didn't dare contradict the boss. By the end of the morning, Michael decided to provoke him. Robert, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Don't you think you lost a few customers today? Lost nothing. Anyone who doesn't want to pay for the quality service I offer can go to the competition. But if you keep losing customers, won't you have financial trouble? Robert let out a forced laugh. Financial trouble? This shop is swimming in money, my friend. Michael knew that was a lie. He'd checked the numbers the week before, and profits were plummeting. Are you sure? Absolutely sure. We've never made as much as we do now. And does the owner know this? The owner doesn't get involved in operations. He trusts me. Michael was confused. The lawyers had never mentioned giving Robert free rein. Did he tell you that? He doesn't need to. It's obvious. If he didn't trust me, he'd have fired me already. Michael realized Robert was interpreting silence as approval. When was the last time you spoke to him? I don't talk to him. I talk to the lawyers when I need to. And they approve your decisions? They've never questioned anything. Michael made a mental note to talk to the lawyers. Apparently, they weren't overseeing the shop's day-to-day operations. Robert, can I see the logbooks? What for? Professional curiosity. I work with shop accounting, remember? Robert hesitated. I can't show you. It's confidential. Just a quick look. I promise I won't copy anything. I said no, Michael pressed. Come on, just so I can understand how you organize cash flow. You're seeming awfully curious for a simple customer. Michael realized he'd overstepped. Sorry, it's a professional habit. I'm always interested in how other businesses work. Robert studied him suspiciously. You said you do accounting for other shops in the area? I did. Which ones? Michael had to improvise. Mark's shop in Newtown, Johnny's gas station in downtown, and a few smaller ones. Robert seemed to recognize the names. I know Mark. He's always complaining about money problems. That's why he needs an accountant. And Johnny owes half the town money. Michael didn't know if that was true, but agreed to keep the conversation going. Exactly. That's why strict financial control is important. Robert nodded, seeming more relaxed. Here, at least, we've never had those problems. Everything's always been well organized. Michael seized the opportunity. Who did the accounting when Mr. Edward was alive? He did everything himself. He was very detail-oriented. And who does it now? The lawyers hired a firm. But I handle the day-to-day. Michael felt a chill. If Robert was managing finances unsupervised, anything could be happening. Do you have a business degree? Don't need one. 15 years of experience is worth more than any diploma. Michael completely disagreed but said nothing. And how did you learn to handle the financial side? By watching Edward. He taught me everything. Michael doubted his father had taught Robert to mistreat customers and overcharge for services. Did he teach you how to price services? Of course. He always said not to work for free. But you also said to be fair to the customers, right? Robert hesitated. Fair is charging the right price for quality work. Michael noticed Robert was twisting his father's teachings to justify his behavior. Robert, can I ask you something personal? Depends. Are you happy working here? The question caught Robert off guard. What do you mean? You always seem angry, treat customers poorly, argue with everyone. You don't seem like a happy person. Robert stayed silent for a few seconds. Work is work. It's not about being happy, it's about making money. But don't you think it'd be easier if you were friendlier with customers? Friendlier? Robert laughed. You think customers want friendliness? Customers want good service and fair prices. Then why did so many customers leave today without closing a deal? Robert got irritated. Because they were bad customers, not worth wasting time on people who just want to haggle. Michael decided to change tactics. Do you have a family, Robert? I have a wife and 2 kids. Do they know how you work? What do you mean? Do they know you treat customers this way? Robert got defensive. I do my job right. I support my family honestly. I'm not questioning your honesty. I'm questioning your approach. What approach? Don't you think it'd be more productive to be more polite? Robert exploded. Listen here, you half-baked accountant. Who are you to lecture me on how to work? I've been in this business 15 years. You understand numbers. I understand people. From what I saw today, you don't understand people very well. What's that supposed to mean? Michael realized he'd gone too far but couldn't stop. Every customer who came in today left unhappy. You treated them poorly, charged outrageous prices, and then blamed them for not closing the deal. Robert turned red with anger. Are you calling me a thief? I'm not calling you a thief. I'm saying your business approach is hurting the shop. Who are you to talk about my shop? Did I say my shop? Robert caught himself and tried to correct it. It's just a figure of speech. I've worked here so long it feels like home. But you know you're not the owner, right? Of course. I know. But in practice, I'm the one running everything here. Michael decided to push further. And what if the real owner shows up and doesn't like what he sees? Robert scoffed. I told you, that kid will never show up here. He's afraid to get his hands dirty. But what if he does? He won't. But what if he does? Robert grew impatient. Why are you so hung up on this? Michael had to think fast again. Because I work with family businesses. I know how messy successions can be. What succession? There was no succession. The boy abandoned everything. Abandoning isn't the same as delegating. To me, it's the same. Michael realized Robert truly didn't see the difference. Robert, have you ever considered that maybe Mr. Edward's son is waiting for the right moment to take over? The right moment? It's been 6 months. If he wanted to take over, he would have done it by now. Maybe he's learning, preparing. Learning what? Mechanics? At 28? It's too late. Michael was surprised. Robert knew his age. How do you know how old he is? Because I knew him as a kid. Watched that brat grow up, always been a failure. Why do you call him a failure? Because he is. Never wanted to learn his father's trade, preferred studying office stuff, and now that his father's gone, he's vanished. Michael felt a mix of anger and sadness. Robert had a very twisted view of him. Maybe he hasn't vanished. Maybe he's around, watching. Robert laughed. Watching? That coward doesn't even have the guts to step in here. Why are you so sure? Because if he had the courage, he would have shown up by now. But he knows he doesn't understand anything about the business. He knows he'd make a fool of himself. Michael was growing increasingly irritated but tried to stay calm. And if he did show up now, what would you do? First, I'd give him a few hard truths. I'd explain how things really work in the real world. What truths? That you can't run an auto shop sitting in an office. That you need to understand mechanics. That customers don't respect a boss who doesn't know the work. Michael mentally noted each of these truths Robert wanted to give him. And then? Then I'd offer to keep running everything. He'd just handle the finances, which suits him better. You think he'd accept? If he has any sense, yes, because he can't run an auto shop alone. Michael decided to test a theory. And if he didn't accept, what if he wanted to take over everything? Robert grew serious. Then we'd have a problem. Why? Because he'd run the shop into the ground in 6 months, and everyone here would be out of a job. Michael looked at the other mechanics. They did seem worried about job security. Have you all talked about this? Talked about what? The future of the shop. Robert lowered his voice. We know things are tough. Sales have dropped a lot these past few months. Michael feigned surprise. Dropped? But you said everything was fine. Robert caught the contradiction. It is fine, just a little slower than usual. How much slower? That's none of your business. Michael pushed further. Robert, if sales are dropping, wouldn't it be better to improve customer service? The service is great. Not from what I saw today. Robert exploded again. You've been here 2 hours and already want to give advice? I've worked here 15 years. But 15 years doing things wrong doesn't make it right. Wrong? Who says I'm doing things wrong? The customers who left unhappy. Those weren't real customers, just people looking for cheap service. Michael realized Robert couldn't admit his mistakes. Robert, can I tell you something? Go ahead. I've worked with several shops that had similar problems. What problems? Falling sales, unhappy customers, unmotivated employees. Robert was reluctantly intrigued. And how did they fix it? By improving service, being fair with pricing, treating customers with respect. Are you saying I don't treat customers with respect? I'm saying I saw you kick an old man out 2 hours ago. Robert got defensive. That old man couldn't pay. He was just wasting my time. How did you know he couldn't pay? By his face, his clothes, the way he talked. Don't you think that's prejudice? Prejudice isn't the same as experience. Michael shook his head. Robert, have you ever considered that maybe he had the money but changed his mind because of how you treated him? Impossible. If he had money, he would have insisted. Or maybe he decided to find a shop where he'd be treated with respect. Robert fell silent for a few seconds. You think I was rude to him? You pushed him out of the shop. He was being pushy. He was asking for a quote. Robert seemed to think about it. Maybe I overdid it a little. Michael saw an opening. Robert, can I make a suggestion? What suggestion? How about trying to be more polite with the next customers? Just as a test. You think it'd make a difference? I'm sure it would. Robert hesitated. But what if they think I'm a pushover? Why would they think that? Because sometimes being too polite comes across as weakness. Michael realized Robert had a very distorted view of leadership. Robert, have you ever met a leader who was respected for being polite? What do you mean? Any boss, any businessman, someone you admired who was polite to people? Robert thought for a moment. Mr. Edward was polite. And did you respect him? Of course. Then why do you think being polite is a sign of weakness? Robert looked confused. I don't know, I guess things have changed. Changed how? People have become more opportunistic. If you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. Michael began to understand the root of the problem. Robert was acting defensively out of fear. Robert, what are you afraid of? Afraid? I'm not afraid of anything. Everyone's afraid of something. What's yours? Robert stayed silent for a long time. I'm afraid of losing my job, he finally admitted. Why would you lose it? Because if Edward's son decides to show up, he could fire me. Why would he do that? Because I don't have an education. I only know how to work with my hands. Michael began to see the whole picture. Robert was behaving aggressively because he felt insecure about his position. Robert, do you think Mr. Edward respected you? He did. Why? Because I was dedicated. I worked hard. And you don't think his son would recognize those qualities? Rich kids don't value honest work. Michael felt a pang of sadness. Why do you think that? Because they never had to work for what they wanted. They don't Know the value of things. Are you sure Edward's son never worked? Positive, always lived off his father's money. Michael knew that wasn't true. He'd worked since he was 18, first as an intern, then as an employee at several companies before opening his own accounting firm. Where did you get that idea? Come on, it's obvious. The son of a garage owner who doesn't like working. On cars. Must be some spoiled brat. Michael realized Robert had built an entire narrative based on assumptions. Robert, have you ever actually talked to him? A few times when he was a kid. And what was he like? Quiet, shy, always afraid of everything. Michael remembered being an introspective child, but not fearful. Afraid of what? Of getting his clothes dirty, of getting hurt, of making noise. Michael chuckled inwardly. His mother had been very strict about cleanliness and wouldn't let him play in the garage. Maybe he was just careful. Careful is an understatement. He was neurotic. And you don't think that could have changed with age? Robert thought about it. People don't change. A scared kid becomes a scared adult. Michael completely disagreed, but decided not to press the issue. Well, what if he did change? What if he became a different person? Impossible. Why impossible? Because I saw him at his father's funeral, still the same. Couldn't even stay till the end. Michael remembered that terrible day. He'd left the wake early because he was grieving too much. Maybe he was in a lot of pain. Pain? He barely shed a tear. Michael almost laughed. He'd cried all night at home, away from everyone's eyes. People handle grief differently. Or he didn't feel any at all. Michael decided he'd heard enough for one day. Robert, I think I'd better go. I'll think over the estimate and come back tomorrow. Fine, but I'm telling you now, the price won't change. Understood? Michael headed to his car but turned back before leaving. Can I give you one last piece of advice? Go ahead. Try being more polite with customers. You might be surprised by the results. I'll think about what you said. Michael got in the car and drove away from Guardian Auto, his mind racing. He needed to process everything he'd learned before deciding what to do next. That night in his apartment downtown, Michael stayed up late thinking about his conversation with Robert. The mechanic clearly acted like he owned the auto shop and had built a very negative image of him based on distorted childhood memories. But what bothered him most was knowing that Robert was driving customers away and harming the business his father had built with so much love. The next day, Michael decided to return to the shop, this time with a different plan. He wanted to observe Robert interacting with other employees and customers to get a fuller picture of the situation. He arrived around 9 in the morning and found Robert arguing with one of the younger mechanics. "How many times do I have to repeat myself?" Robert shouted. "When I say to do it a certain way, you do it that way." "But Robert," replied the young man, who couldn't have been more than 25, "the way you're insisting on doing it, the part won't even last 6 months. You think I don't know what I'm doing? That's not it. It's just that there are more efficient ways to—" "Shut up," Robert cut him off. "I've got 15 years of experience, you've got 2. Who's supposed to teach who here?" The young mechanic turned red, but stayed quiet. Michael noticed the other employees watching the scene uncomfortably. "Good morning," Michael said, stepping forward. Robert turned and recognized him. "Oh, it's you, made up your mind about the estimate." "Still thinking. Mind if I watch you all work a little longer?" "Sure, but I'm busy today. We've got a lot of work." Michael looked around. There were 4 cars in the shop, 2 more than the day before. "Glad business is picking up." "I told you it would." Michael settled back into the plastic chair and kept observing. Throughout the morning, he witnessed 3 more arguments between Robert and the employees. Each followed the same pattern. Someone suggested a different way of doing something. Robert got angry and imposed his will using his authority. Around 10 o'clock, a woman in her 50s arrived with an Accord that was making noise. "Good morning," she said politely. "I'd like an estimate for my car." Robert barely glanced at her. "What's the problem?" "It's making a strange noise when I accelerate." "Must be the exhaust. It'll be expensive." "You haven't even looked at the car yet." "Don't need to, from the sound of it, that's the issue." The woman grew uneasy. But wouldn't it be better to check before giving an estimate? Ma'am, I've been doing this for 15 years, so I can recognize a problem by the sound. But every car is different. All cars are the same, an engine's an engine. Michael could see the woman getting irritated by Robert's rudeness. How much would the repair cost? $500. 500? But you don't even know the exact problem. I told you, it's the exhaust, $500. Couldn't you give a more detailed estimate? Robert sighed impatiently. Ma'am, either you want the service or you don't. I don't have time to explain the obvious. The woman looked at Michael as if asking for support. He wanted to step in, but he knew it could complicate his strategy. I'd like a second opinion, the woman said. Second opinion? You think I don't know what I'm doing? That's not it. It's just that $500 is a lot to spend without being sure. Robert grew angry. Then go find another shop. We don't work for free here. The woman left, visibly offended. Michael approached Robert. Don't you think you were a little harsh with her? Harsh? I offered the service. She didn't want it. But you didn't even properly inspect the car. Didn't need to. Experience isn't up for debate. Michael decided to test Robert. What if it's not the exhaust? It's the exhaust. But what if it's something else? Robert got irritated. Are you questioning my competence? As I'm not questioning it. I just think it would be more professional to inspect before giving a diagnosis. Listen here, accountant. You understand numbers. I understand cars. Each to their own. Michael realized Robert didn't take kindly to being questioned, even when done respectfully. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now back to the story. For the rest of the morning, Michael witnessed two more similar episodes. Robert treated every customer with suspicion and arrogance, gave hasty diagnoses, and charged prices without clear justification. At lunchtime, the employees gathered around a makeshift table at the back of the shop. Michael approached and asked if he could join them. Of course, said the youngest mechanic, the same one who had argued with Robert earlier. I'm Joey. Michael, nice to meet you. You a customer? Sort of. I'm thinking of getting some work done here. Joey made a face. If I were you, I'd look for another shop. Michael pretended to be surprised. Why? Joey glanced around. To make sure Robert wasn't listening. Robert's getting harder and harder to deal with. He treats everyone badly and charges ridiculous prices. How long have you worked here? 2 years, but it's been getting worse. Worse how? Ever since Mr. Edward passed, Robert acts like he owns the place. He won't take suggestions from anyone, and even kicks customers out left and right. Michael played dumb. Who was Mr. Edward? The owner of the shop. He was a good man, respected everyone and treated customers like family. And who owns it now? His son. But the guy disappeared after the funeral, probably planning to sell everything. Michael decided to dig for more information. Have you ever talked to the son? Never. He doesn't even show up. Robert keeps saying he's some clueless rich kid who doesn't know a thing about cars. And you think that's true? Joey hesitated. I don't know. Never met the guy. But I do know Robert's killing the shop. If this keeps up, we'll all be out of jobs. Why don't you talk to the lawyers? Robert won't allow it. Says any issues have to go through him first. Michael mentally noted that detail. And you all just accept that? What choice do we have? Robert's the boss. Michael looked at the other mechanics. They all seemed discouraged and worried. What was it like working here when Mr. Edward was alive? Completely different, said an older mechanic. Edward respected our opinions. If we had an idea to improve something, he'd listen. And Robert doesn't? Robert thinks he's the only one who knows anything. If we suggest something, he gets mad. Michael began to understand the problem wasn't just how Robert treated customers, but also how he led the team. Have you thought about looking for work somewhere else? Yeah, said Joey, but jobs are hard to find. Besides, we care about this place. Mr. Edward treated us like family. Michael felt his heart tighten. His father really had created a family atmosphere in the shop. Do you think his son knows how things are running here? Impossible, said the older mechanic. If he knew, he'd have done something by now. Like what? First, he'd put Robert in his place. Second, he'd changed this policy of outrageous prices. Michael was curious. Were prices different before? Very different. Mr. Edward always said a fair profit was better than a guaranteed loss. And now? Now Robert thinks he can charge whatever he wants because he's got experience. Michael wanted to know more about the finances. Do you know how sales are doing? The mechanics exchanged glances. We know business is really slow, said Joey, but Robert won't let us see the numbers. Why not? He says it's none of our business. Michael found this very strange. His father had always been transparent with employees about the company's financial situation, and there's no way for you to check. How? Robert controls everything. Michael decided to take a chance. What if you contacted the real owner directly? How? We don't even know where he lives. Michael almost laughed. They could easily find his address, but apparently never tried. Don't you have the lawyer's phone number? We do, but Robert forbade us from calling. What if you called anyway? We're afraid of getting fired. Michael understood their dilemma. The employees were torn between loyalty to the old boss and fear of the current one. But if things keep going like this, you might get fired anyway. That's true, Joey admitted. We're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Michael felt a heavy responsibility. These people depended on the shop to support their families, and he was letting Robert ruin everything. Can I make a suggestion? Sure. How about writing a letter to the owner explaining how things are? A letter? Yes, describing the situation, asking for a meeting. The mechanic seemed interested in the idea, but how would we deliver it? Through the lawyers. They'd definitely pass it along. You think it would help? I'm sure any responsible owner would want to know how their business is doing. Joey nodded. We'll think about it. Just then, Robert returned from lunch and noticed Michael talking with the employees. What are you all discussing? Nothing important, Michael replied. Just getting to know the team better. Robert looked suspicious. Back to work, everyone. We've got a lot to do this afternoon. The mechanic scattered, but Michael noticed Joey giving him a discreet signal, as if wanting to talk privately later. Robert approached Michael. Made a decision about your car? Still thinking. Then you'd better decide soon. I can't hold space indefinitely. Michael realized Robert was trying to pressure him. What's the rush? Because I have other customers. Waiting. Michael looked around. There was no line of customers. I don't see any queue. Robert grew irritated. You don't know how things work here. I have customers who call and schedule. I see. How many appointments do you have today? That's none of your business. Michael realized Robert was bluffing. Fine. But if there's no urgency, I'd rather observe a bit more before deciding. Observe what? How you all work. I want to make sure I'm leaving my car in good hands. Robert didn't like this answer. Are you doubting our work quality? Not doubting, just observing. Then observe, but don't get in the way. Michael agreed and returned to his chair. That afternoon, he witnessed more instances of poor service and overcharging. 3 customers left without making deals. Around 5 o'clock, Robert called Michael over. Made up your mind or not? I've decided not to get the service done here. Robert looked surprised. Why? Michael chose honesty. Because I didn't like the service. You treat customers poorly and charge outrageous prices. Robert turned furious. Excuse me? You asked for my opinion. I'm giving it. I didn't ask your opinion. I asked if you were getting the work done, and I answered no. Then get out. I don't need people who just come to criticize. Michael stood calmly. All right, but before I go, can I give you one last piece of advice? I don't want advice from anyone. If you keep this up, you'll run. This shop into the ground, Robert exploded. Run it into the ground. This shop has never run better. So why did so many customers leave today without closing the deal? Because they were bad customers, or because you treated them poorly? Robert stepped toward Michael, pointing a finger in his face. Listen here, you smug jerk. Who are you to lecture me? I've worked in this shop for 15 years. I know this business better than any half-baked accountant. Michael kept his cool. Robert, you may have 15 years of experience in mechanics, but you clearly don't understand customer service. Customer service? You want me to kiss up to customers? I want you to be polite and honest. I am honest. Charging $500 for a service without even inspecting the car isn't honest. Robert was speechless for a few seconds. I know how much the service costs. But you didn't even know the exact problem. Yes, I did. Michael shook his head. Robert, you're destroying everything Mr. Edward built. Don't bring up Edward. You never even met him. But I know his employees, and they all say he'd never treat a customer the way you do. Robert looked at the mechanics, who were silently watching the argument. Is that true? He asked them. Do you think I treat customers badly? The employees stayed quiet, clearly uncomfortable. Speak up, Robert insisted. Joey was the first to answer. Robert, you know I respect you, but I think sometimes you're a little too harsh. Too harsh. It's just that Mr. Edward was always very polite to everyone. Robert fell silent for a moment. You all think that? The other mechanics nodded timidly. Robert turned back to Michael. Happy now? You turned my own employees against me. I didn't turn anyone against you. I just asked for their opinion. Who are you really? Robert eyed him suspiciously. You show up out of nowhere, spend 2 days observing everything, ask 1,000 questions about the shop. Michael realized Robert was growing suspicious of his true intentions. I already told you I'm an accountant and I work with several shops. As what accountant spends 2 whole days in one shop just to decide on a simple service? Michael didn't have a good answer. I'm thorough. Thorough or a spy? A spy? Yeah, a spy for the competition. Or one of those government guys who come to inspect. Michael almost laughed. Robert, you're being paranoid. Paranoid? Then explain why you're so interested in how this shop runs. Michael decided to share part of the truth. Because I'm thinking of opening my own shop. I want to understand how the business works. Robert seemed to relax slightly at that. Oh, so that's it. You want to copy our business model. Something like that. Then you should be learning, not criticizing. Michael couldn't hold back. Robert, if I copied your model, I'd be broke in a month. Robert flew into a rage again. Enough. Get out of here now, and don't come back. Michael walked toward his car but turned to the employees before getting in. Think about what we talked about today. You deserve to work in a better environment. Robert shouted. Don't talk to this guy again. He's trying to steal you away to work at his shop. Michael got in his car and drove off, certain he needed to act fast. The situation was worse than he'd thought, and Robert wasn't just hurting the business, he was hurting the employees' lives too. That night, Michael called the law office handling his affairs. Mr. Sullivan, it's Michael Anderson. Michael, how are you? It's been a while since we spoke. I'm fine. Doctor, I need to know how things are going at the shop. The shop? It's running normally. Robert sends monthly reports saying everything's fine. Michael was surprised. What kind of reports? Basic financial reports. Income, expenses, number of customers served. And are the numbers good? According to him, yes, there was no significant drop in business. Michael knew that was a lie. Mr. Sullivan, do you have the reports there? I do. Would you like me to email them? Yes. I'll send them right away, but why the question? Are you thinking of taking over management? Maybe. It depends on what I find out. Michael hung up and waited for the email. When it arrived, he could hardly believe his eyes. According to Robert's reports, the shop was servicing an average of 15 cars a day and maintaining steady revenue. Michael knew those numbers were false. In the 2 days he'd spent there, he'd seen at most 4 cars serviced daily. Robert was lying to the lawyers. Michael decided he needed proof before acting. The next day, he parked across the street and observed the shop from a distance. He wanted to count how many customers actually came and went. From 8 in the morning until noon, only 2 cars entered the shop. In the afternoon, 3 more. Total, 5 cars the entire day. Michael repeated his observation for the rest of the week. The average was 5 to 6 cars a day, nowhere near the 15 Robert claimed. Now he was sure Robert wasn't just ruining customer service, he was also lying about the results. On Friday, Michael decided it was time to act. But first he wanted to give Robert one last chance. He walked into the shop around 10 in the morning. "You again?" Robert said, visibly irritated. "I thought I made it clear you weren't welcome here." "Robert, we need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about." "Yes, we do. It's about the future of the shop." Robert grew suspicious. "What future?" "Robert, can I ask you a direct question?" "Go ahead." "Do you really think this shop is doing well?" "Of course it is. Even though you only service 5 or 6 cars a day." Robert turned pale. "How do you know how many cars we service daily?" "Because I've been watching." "Watching? You've been spying on me?" "I was trying to understand why the numbers you report to the lawyers are so different from reality." Robert froze for a few seconds. "What numbers?" 15 cars a day, Robert, that's what you claim." Robert began to sweat. "Who showed you those reports?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is that you're lying." "I'm not lying." "Then how do you explain the difference?" Robert scrambled for an excuse. It's just, some days are better, others worse. The average comes out to 15. "Robert, I watched for an entire week. The average didn't even reach 6. Robert realized he was cornered. "Who are you really?" he asked, voice trembling. Michael took a deep breath. It was time to reveal the truth. "My name is Michael Anderson. I'm Edward Anderson's son. I own this shop." The silence that followed was deafening. Robert stared at Michael as if he'd seen a ghost. That's impossible," he stammered. "Why would it be impossible?" Because you don't look anything like him." Michael removed his glasses and hat. "And now?" Robert looked closer and finally recognized the familiar features. "My God, it really is you." "It really is." Robert sank into a chair. Why didn't you say who you were from the start?" "Because I wanted to understand how things really work here. And now I do." Robert began to shake. "I can explain everything. I'm listening. It's just, I was trying to protect the shop. Protect it by lying about the numbers. It's not a lie. I just didn't want you to worry." Michael couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. "Worry? Robert, you nearly ran my father's business into the ground." "That's not true. I did my best." "But your best was kicking out customers and lying to the lawyers?" Robert began to cry. "I didn't know what to do. After your father died, everything got really hard. Customers started distrusting us. Suppliers began demanding cash payments. I tried to keep everything running by myself." Michael felt a pang of guilt. Maybe he had been negligent in abandoning the shop right after his father's death. "Robert, if you were struggling, why didn't you reach out to me?" "Because I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared you'd blame me. Scared you'd shut down the shop. Scared I'd lose my job." Michael began to understand that Robert had acted out of desperation, not malice. "Robert, you worked with my father for 15 years. He trusted you." "I know, and I let him down." "It's not about letting him down. It's about asking for help when you need it." Robert lifted his face. You're not going to fire me?" Michael thought for a moment. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you're willing to change." "Change how?" "First, stop lying about the numbers. Second, learn to treat customers with respect. Third, stop acting like you own this place." Robert nodded eagerly. "I'll change. I promise I'll change." "Robert, it's not just about promising. You need to understand where you went wrong." "I do." "Do you?" "Then explain why you treated customers that way." Robert was silent for a moment. I think I was angry." "Angry about what?" "Angry that you left the shop. Angry that I had to make decisions I wasn't ready for. Angry that I was stuck in a mess I didn't know how to fix." Michael started to see the psychology behind Robert's behavior. "So you took that anger out on the customers?" "I guess so, without realizing it." "Robert, customers aren't to blame for our internal problems." "I know. It was wrong." "And lying about the numbers? How do you justify that?" Robert hesitated. I thought if you knew how bad things were, you'd shut it all down for good." "So you thought lying was better?" "I thought I could fix it myself. That things would eventually get better." Michael shook his head. "Robert, things don't just get better on their own. They get better when we work for it." "I did work. I worked hard." "You worked in the wrong direction. driving customers away instead of bringing them in. Robert lowered his head. I see that now. Michael sat beside Robert. Robert, I'm going to make you an offer. What offer? You stay at the shop, but as an employee, not the boss. Then who's going to be the boss? For now, me, until things stabilize. Robert looked relieved. You'll be here every day? I will, at least for the first few months. What about the other employees? Will they stay? If they want to, yes, but I'll talk to each one individually. Robert nodded. Michael, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Give me a chance to prove I can change. Michael studied him for a moment. Robert, I'll give you that chance, but with conditions. What conditions? First, you apologize to every customer you mistreated. Second, you help rebuild trust with the employees. Third, you learn to work as part of a team, not a dictator. I accept all of them. You sure? It won't be easy. You'll have to swallow your pride more than once. I'll do whatever it takes to keep working here. Michael stood up. Then let's start right now. How? By calling all the employees for a meeting. I'll introduce myself properly and explain how things will work from now on. Robert stood too. Michael, can I tell you something? Go ahead. Your father would be proud of you. Michael felt his eyes well up. You think so? I know so. He always said you were very smart, that one day you'd surprise everyone. But you said I was a failure. Robert Wilson turned red. I said that because I was angry. It wasn't what I really thought. Michael Anderson nodded. Then let's work together to honor his memory. Let's do it. Michael called all the employees to gather in the center of the shop. Everyone, I want to introduce someone to you, said Robert, his voice shaking. This is Michael Anderson, Mr. Edward Anderson's son. He's the true owner of the shop. The employees looked surprised, but Michael noticed relief on their faces. Everyone, Michael said, I know things have been tough here these past few months. I know there have been communication and management problems, but starting today we'll work together to bring this shop back to what it was in my father's time. Joey was the first to speak. Michael, we were worried you'd sell everything. I'm not selling. This shop is my father's legacy. I'll preserve it. What about Robert? Asked another mechanic. Michael looked at Robert. Robert will keep working here, but now as part of the team, not as the sole boss. Robert nodded. Everyone, I want to apologize. I know I haven't been a good leader these past months. I promise I'll change. The employees seemed surprised by Robert's humility. Robert, Michael said, how about you start by calling that lady who came in yesterday, invite her back, and offer a free diagnosis for her car's problem. Now? Now! Robert picked up the phone and dialed. Michael watched as he apologized to the customer in a shaky voice and offered a new service. She agreed, Robert said, hanging up. She'll be here in an hour. Great. And you'll personally take care of her, with politeness and honesty. I will. Michael turned to the other employees. Everyone, from now on, will work with complete transparency. I'll share all the shop's numbers with you. You'll know exactly how the revenue, costs, and profits are doing, and I want to hear your suggestions for improving our service. The employees smiled for the first time in months. Any suggestions to start? Michael asked. Joey raised his hand. I think we should run a campaign to win back old customers. Good idea. How? By calling all the customers who had bad service these past months, offering a discount on their first visit. Michael liked the suggestion. Robert, what do you think? Robert hesitated, but then nodded. It's a good idea. Then let's do it. Robert, will you help make those calls? I will. And will you personally apologize to each customer? I will. For the rest of the day, Michael watched Robert interact with the customer who had returned. To his surprise, the mechanic was polite, gave a careful diagnosis, and charged a fair price. How did it go? Michael asked after the customer left. It was good, Robert said, seeming surprised at himself. She was happy and said she'd recommend the shop to others. See, it's not that hard. No, and you know what? I felt better too. Michael smiled. Treating others well makes you feel good about yourself. That's true. In the following weeks, Michael spent every day at the shop, working side by side with Robert and the other employees. They made several changes: friendlier service, transparent pricing, careful diagnostics, and honest communication with customers. Robert kept his promise, calling dozens of customers who had been poorly served, personally apologizing, and offering discounts to bring them back. Many accepted. By the end of the first month, business had doubled. By the end of the second, it had tripled. "Michael," Robert said one afternoon, "can I confess something to you?" "Of course. I was wrong about you." "In what way?" "I thought you wouldn't be able to run a shop, but you understand much more about it than I imagined." Michael laughed. "Robert, running a business isn't just about knowing mechanics. It's about knowing how to handle people." "That's true, I've learned that over the past few weeks. And you know what else I've learned?" "What?" "That my father wasn't just building a shop, he was building a family." Robert smiled. "He always said that we were a family. And that's what we'll keep being." 3 months later, Guardian Auto was running better than ever. The service was friendly, the prices fair, and the employees worked with motivation. Robert had become a respectful and collaborative leader. He still had his moments of impatience, but now he knew how to control them. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now back to the story. One day Michael was organizing papers in the office when Robert knocked on the door. "Can I come in?" "Of course." "Michael, I want to show you something." Robert handed him a sheet of paper. "What's this?" "It's a list of all the customers I treated poorly over the last few months. I called every one of them, apologized to each one, and almost all of them came back." Michael looked at the list. There were over 50 names. "Robert, that must have been really hard for you." "It was, but it was necessary." "And how do you feel now?" "I feel at peace, like a weight's been lifted off my shoulders." Michael got emotional. "Robert, my father would be so proud of you." "You think so?" "I'm sure of it. He always believed people can change when they want to." Robert sat in the chair across from the desk. "Michael, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Why did you give me a second chance after everything I did?" Michael thought for a moment. "Because my father taught me that everyone deserves a second chance, and because I saw you weren't a bad person, just a lost one." "Lost?" "Yeah. You were trying to do the right thing, but you didn't know how." Robert nodded. "That's exactly it. I wanted to honor your father's memory, but I didn't know how without him." "Robert, honoring his memory isn't about trying to be like him. It's about continuing the values he stood for." "What values?" "Respect, honesty, teamwork, fair, treatment for customers and employees." "That's true." Michael stood up and walked to the window overlooking the shop. He saw the mechanics working in harmony, customers being well taken care of, and a cooperative atmosphere that hadn't existed for months. "Robert, you know what? Tell me. I think my father would be proud of both of us. Of you for changing, and of me for taking on the responsibility that was mine." Robert joined him at the window. "Michael, can I make a suggestion?" "What suggestion?" "How about we put a picture of your father up on that main wall, to always remind us of the values he stood for?" Michael smiled. "That's a great idea." They walked to the spot Robert had suggested, a wall clearly visible to both employees and customers. "This would be perfect," Michael said. "I'll have a plaque made too, with the shop's values." "What values would you put?" Robert thought for a moment. "Respect for customers, honesty in relationships, teamwork, fair prices, and quality service." Michael nodded. "Perfect." That afternoon, they went together to pick out a photo and order the plaque. When they returned, they found the shop bustling with satisfied customers being helped by motivated employees. "Michael," Joey said walking up, "the man with the taxi fleet just called. Want to close a preventive maintenance contract for 20 cars." Michael got excited. "What great news, Robert. What do you think?" "I think we can do it. We have the structure and team for it." "Then let's schedule a meeting with him." That night, Michael stayed at the shop late, organizing the month's numbers. For the first time since his father's death, the results were excellent. Robert had stayed too, helping to organize the tools. "Robert, can you come here a minute?" "Sure." Michael showed him the spreadsheet with the numbers. "Look at this. This month we serviced an average of 18 cars a day. Revenue grew 40% compared to last month." Robert smiled. "And the quality improved too. We didn't get any complaints." "Do you know what this means?" "That we're on the right track. It means that when we work together, with respect and honesty, everyone wins. The customers, the employees, the company." Robert nodded. "Michael, can I confess something to you?" "Go ahead." "I was really afraid when you took over the shop." "Why?" "Because I thought you'd change everything. That you'd fire everyone and hire new people. And now? Now I see you did better. You changed what needed to be changed but kept what was working." Michael got emotional. "Robert, do you know what was the hardest thing for me in all this?" "What?" "Accepting that I'd made mistakes too." "How so?" "I abandoned you all when you needed me most. Right after my father's death, when everyone was lost, I just disappeared." Robert stayed silent. "If I'd taken responsibility from the start, maybe none of this would have happened." "Michael, you were grieving too. You'd just lost your father. But you all were grieving too, and you needed leadership." Robert stepped closer. "Michael, what matters is you're here now, and you're doing the right thing." "You think so?" "I'm sure your father would be very proud." Michael felt his eyes well up again. "You know what moves me the most?" "What?" "Seeing how we turned a bad situation into something good. Together." Robert nodded. "It's true. And I learned a lot in this process." "What did you learn?" "I learned that being a leader isn't about bossing people around. It's about serving others." Michael smiled. "Robert, that's the most important lesson of all." 6 months later, Guardian Auto was once again the go-to shop in the area. The friendly service, fair prices, and quality work had won back old customers and attracted many new ones. Michael had implemented several innovations: a phone scheduling system, a comfortable waiting area for customers, and a loyalty program with progressive discounts. But the most important thing was the work environment. The employees were motivated. Robert had become a true leader, and everyone worked as a united team. One Friday afternoon, Michael was in the office when he heard a commotion outside. He went to see what was happening and found all the employees gathered around something. "What's going on here?" he asked. "Michael, come see," said Joey, excited. Michael approached and saw they'd installed a photo of his father and a plaque with the shop's values. The photo showed Edward Anderson smiling in overalls, his hands dirty with grease in front of the shop. The polished bronze plaque read, "Guardian Auto values respect for the customer. Honesty in relationships, teamwork, fair prices, quality service, in memory of Edward Anderson, founder and example of integrity." Michael was moved. "It's perfect," he said, his voice choked. Robert stepped forward. "Michael, we all pitched in to buy this. We wanted to honor your father and show our commitment to the values he stood for." Michael looked at all the employees. You saw pride, determination, and unity in their faces. "Everyone, you don't know how much this means to me." "It means a lot to us too," said the oldest mechanic. "Your father was like a father to all of us, and you've been like a brother." Michael approached his father's photo and touched the frame. "Dad, we did it. The shop is back to what you always dreamed it would be." Robert placed a hand on Michael's shoulder. "He's watching, and he's proud." Just then, a new customer arrived, a middle-aged man with a car that was making noise. "Good afternoon," he said. "I've heard great things about this shop. Could you take a look at my car?" Robert stepped forward. "Of course, sir. I'll do a full diagnosis and give you an honest estimate. What's the issue?" "It's making a strange noise when I accelerate. I'll check it carefully. Please, can you park the car over there? And feel free to wait in our lounge. There's fresh coffee and magazines." Michael watched Robert assist the customer with politeness, patience, and professionalism. It was a complete transformation. After inspecting the car, Robert returned to the customer. "Sir, I found the problem. It's the alternator belt. It needs to be replaced. How much will it be?" $80 including labor. The customer was surprised. That's it? Other places charged me way more. Here, we charge a fair price. No more, no less. How long will it take? About 40 minutes. You can wait or come back later. I'll wait. I need the car today. Perfect. I'll get started right away. Michael observed Robert making the repair. He worked carefully, explaining each step to the customer and finished on time. All done, sir. You can test it. The customer started the car and the noise was completely gone. Excellent. How much was it again? $80. The customer paid and before leaving turned to Robert. Great service. I'll recommend you to all my friends. Thank you, sir. Come back anytime you need us. After the customer left, Michael approached Robert. Robert, did you see how happy that customer looked? I did, and you know what? I felt satisfied too. Why? Because I did a good job, charged a fair price, and the customer left happy. Everyone won, Michael smiled. That's exactly how my father always worked, and that's how we'll keep working. At the end of the day, when all the employees had gone, Michael and Robert stayed talking in the empty shop. Robert, can I ask you something? Of course. If you could go back in time, would you do anything differently? Robert thought for a moment. I would. I would have reached out to you right after your father's funeral. I would have asked for help instead of trying to handle everything alone. And I'd do things differently too. How so? I would have taken responsibility from the start. I wouldn't have abandoned you when you needed me most. But you were grieving. I was, but that doesn't excuse neglecting my responsibilities. Robert nodded. I think we both learned something important. What? That when we face problems together, we find solutions. When we face them alone, we create more problems. Michael agreed. It's true. And we learned that pride is the biggest enemy of solutions. How so? You were too proud to ask for help. I was too proud to admit I didn't know how to run a shop. We almost ruined the business because of pride. Robert laughed. Yeah, how silly. But what matters is we overcame it. Robert stood up and walked over to Edward's photo. Mr. Anderson, thank you for creating this place. And thank you for raising a son who forgave my mistakes. Michael joined him. Dad, thank you for trusting Robert all these years. He lost his way for a while, but he found his way back. The two stood in silence for a few moments, looking at the photo. Michael, said Robert, can I promise you something? Go ahead. I promise I'll honor your father's memory every day. I'll treat every customer the way I'd want my own family treated. I'll work with honesty and dedication. And I'll support you in every decision that's good for the shop. Michael was moved. Robert, I promise I'll value you and all the employees. I'll listen to your suggestions, I'll be fair in my decisions, and I'll work alongside you to keep this shop as an example of integrity. They embraced, sealing a commitment that went far beyond a professional relationship. It was a partnership, built on mutual respect, shared goals and common values. A year later, Guardian Auto was running better than ever. Michael had become a respected businessman in the area. Robert was recognized as one of the best mechanics in town, and all the EAU employees felt valued and motivated. They had expanded the business, adding preventive maintenance services and forming partnerships with several local companies. But most importantly, they had upheld the values Edward Anderson had established: respect, honesty, and quality. On tour, the anniversary of Edward's passing, Michael organized a small ceremony in his honor. All the employees gathered in front of the photo, and each shared a memory of the shop's founder. When I first started working here, Joey said, Mr. Edward taught me that mechanics isn't just about fixing cars, it's about fixing people's lives. He always said, recalled the oldest mechanic, that one satisfied customer is worth more than 10 new ones. And that good work is the best advertisement, added another. Robert was the last to speak. Mr. Edward taught me that leadership isn't about giving orders, it's about serving. It took me a while to understand that lesson, but once I did, it changed my life. Michael closed the ceremony. Dad, a year after your passing, I can say your shop hasn't just survived, it's thrived. Not because we're better mechanics than before, but because we've learned to work together, with respect and honesty. Your values live on here, and they always will. After the ceremony, Michael and Robert stayed talking in the office. Michael, can I tell you something I've never told anyone? Of course. When you revealed you were the owner of the shop, I wanted to run away. Why? Because I knew I'd done everything wrong. I knew I deserved to be fired. So why didn't you run? Because I remembered a conversation I had with your father shortly before he passed. Michael was intrigued. What conversation? He said sometimes people make mistakes not out of malice but out of fear, and that the only way to overcome fear is by facing the consequences of our actions. Michael was moved. My father was always wise. And he said one more thing. What? He said you were a good person, and that if I ever needed your help, I could trust you. Michael was surprised. He said that? He did. And he was right. Michael hugged Robert. Robert, you know what this conversation means to me. What? It means my father knew there would be challenges, but he trusted we'd find the solution together. It's like he saw it all coming. Maybe he did, or maybe he just trusted the values he taught us. Robert smiled. Michael, I think we've learned the most important lesson of all, which is that no matter how tough the problems are, if we face them together with honesty and respect, we'll always find a way. Michael nodded. And that pride and fear are the biggest enemies of success. True, but humility and courage are our greatest allies. That night, Michael went home with a deep sense of fulfillment. He had honored his father's memory, saved the family business, preserved the employees' jobs, and even helped Robert become a better person. But he knew the most important thing wasn't the financial results or the recognition. The most important thing was having learned that leading isn't about giving orders, but serving. That success isn't just about profit, but also dignity. And that family isn't just about blood, but mutual commitment. 2 years later, Guardian Auto was considered the best shop in the region, not just for its technical quality, but mainly for its compassionate service and the values it upheld. Michael had married an engineer who admired his dedication to the employees. Robert had become a respected figure in the community, known for his honesty and competence. All the employees had grown professionally and personally. But the most important thing was that they had created something bigger than a business. They had created an example of how people can work together, overcome differences, and build something lasting based on solid values. One Sunday afternoon, Michael was at the shop handling some paperwork when Robert showed up. "What are you doing here on a Sunday?" Robert asked. "Organizing some papers. And you?" "I came to get a tool I forgot, but honestly, I like coming here on weekends. It gives me peace." Michael smiled. "Me too. This place has a special energy." "It really does. It's like your father is still here." Michael looked at Edward's photo. "Maybe he is." "Michael, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course. Sometimes, when I'm working alone here, I feel like someone's watching me, like someone's approving of my work." Michael felt a shiver. "I feel the same thing. Do you think it's silly?" "I don't. I think some people leave such a strong mark on the places they loved that it never fades." Robert nodded. "Your father loved this place deeply, and so do you." "I do. This place gave me everything. Work, dignity, a second chance, true friends." Michael got emotional. "Robert, do you know what my greatest satisfaction is in all of this?" "What?" "Seeing you become the person you always had the potential to be." "And do you know what mine is?" "Tell me." "Seeing you become the leader your father knew you'd be." The two fell silent, gazing at the shop they had transformed together. "Michael," Robert said, "can I ask you one last question?" "Of course." "If you could send a message to your father, what would you say?" Michael thought for a moment. "I'd say I understood the lesson, that I learned leading is serving, that true wealth is the people around us, and that love is the only force capable of turning problems into solutions." Robert smiled. "I think he'd be very proud." "And if you could send him a message?" Robert reflected. "I'd ask him to forgive me for the mistakes I made, but to thank him for giving me the chance to learn and grow. And that I promise to honor his teachings for the rest of my life." Michael placed a hand on Robert's shoulder. "Robert, I'm sure he's already forgiven us. and I'm sure he's proud of both of us." At that moment, the shop phone rang. "Michael," answered. "Guardian Auto, good afternoon." "Hi, is this Michael? It's Martha, remember me? I was a customer there about 2 years ago." Michael remembered. She was the woman Robert had mistreated, who later returned after he called to apologize. "Of course, Mrs. Martha. How are you?" "I'm well. I'm calling with some news. My son is starting a transport company and needs a trustworthy shop to maintain his fleet. I recommended you. He'll call tomorrow." Michael was thrilled. "That's wonderful news. Thank you so much for your trust. You deserve it. Ever since I started getting service there again, I've never had any problems. And Robert has become a different person. Now he's polite, honest, and does excellent work. I'll pass along the compliment to him. Please do, and congratulations on your work." The whole area speaks highly of Guardian Auto. Michael hung up and shared the news with Robert. "See," said Michael, "the customers you treated poorly in the past are now our biggest supporters." Robert was moved. "It's true, and you know." "Why?" "Why? Because people value those who have the humility to admit their mistakes and the courage to change them." Michael nodded. "Robert, I think we've learned the most valuable lesson of all." "What's that?" "That it's never too late to start over, that it's always possible to be a better person, and that the past doesn't define the future." Robert walked over to Edward's photo. "Mr. Anderson, thank you for never giving up on me, even when I deserved it." Michael joined him. "Dad, thank you for teaching me that leading is loving, and that loving means giving second chances." The two left the shop together, walking toward the future they had built with hard work, humility, and determination. The next day, Martha's son actually called. They closed a contract for maintaining 15 trucks, the biggest contract in the shop's history. "Robert," Michael said after the meeting, "do you realize what just happened?" "What?" "A customer you mistreated 2 years ago just brought us the biggest contract in our history." Robert laughed. Life has those little ironies. "It's not irony, it's the law of return. The good we do today comes back multiplied tomorrow." "And the bad too?" "That too. That's why it's so important to always do the right thing." Robert nodded. "Michael, can I promise you something?" "Go ahead." "I promise I'll carry this lesson for the rest of my life. Not just at work, but in all my relationships." Michael was touched. "Robert, do you know what that means?" "What?" "It means my father didn't just leave behind a shop as his legacy. He left an example that will keep multiplying through the people who work here." Robert smiled. "That's true. Every customer we serve well, every employee we treat with respect, every problem we solve honestly. It's all a way to honor his memory." Michael looked around the shop. He saw movement, prosperity, harmony. But above all, he saw purpose. "Robert, I think I finally understand what my father's real dream was." "What was it?" "It wasn't just about having a thriving shop. It was about creating a place where people could work with dignity, grow as human beings, and serve the community with excellence." Robert nodded. "And we made that dream come true." "We did. Together." End of story. Now tell us what you thought of Michael and Robert's story. Do you think Robert deserved a second chance? And did Michael do the right thing by forgiving him? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories.